Do you know what really sucks? Is sitting down to edit your project and realizing that you have gaps in your coverage or shots missing. You need to have a really good, specific, and detailed shot list. Head over to filmmakersecrets.com/shot list, SHOTLIST, to get a killer shot list template along with some training where I show you step by step exactly how to use it.
You essentially have to hand these artists the brush and say, hey, you know what? I can't give you money, but what I can give you is creative freedom up here. This is my idea on paper just to kind of get it going, but I want your idea. I want your magic in my project. And when you say that to someone, they're not thinking about money anymore. They're thinking about how if this might be one of 10 times in their life that they actually do get to do exactly what they want.
Filmmakers have the power to evoke emotion, inspire thought, and drive universal change in this world. So how does a filmmaker thrive in an environment that is almost intentionally designed to bring you down? That is the question, and this podcast reveals the answer. What's happening, filmmakers? It's George VK. Welcome to Filmmaker Secrets podcast. It's a very special edition. I've got my really good friend, really best friend, Bryan Smith, that I've invited on this really special edition of Filmmaker Secrets podcast. He is a storyteller by nature. He is a baker and a cook extraordinaire. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bryan Smith. So Bryan, go ahead and say what's up to our filmmakers and share the one secret about life, about filmmaking, about storytelling that you've been keeping from us.
Oh man. Number one, George, thank you for that introduction there. I don't know if I've been called a cook extraordinaire.
You're welcome.
Man, what is the one secret I've been keeping from all the filmmakers? So I think that throughout, I'm trying not to wax too philosophically here. I think that when you're pursuing anything, so for me in school, when I was pursuing video production, marketing, graphic design, that kind of work, there are always like other small things and hobbies that kind of pique your interest. For me, definitely cooking was one of those things. Like I often found myself on sets thinking like, oh, how can I like kind of cater this? Like when you and I shot Decrees, I tried to do that quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Part of it was to save money, and part of it was because I really enjoy cooking and sharing food with people. And sometimes I look back and think, oh, maybe if I had stopped producing back then and then jumped into cooking earlier, I'd be in like this different spot and I'd be like this amazing chef in Denver. And like now, I don't think that would be true at all. I think I really had to have all of the different experiences from trying to work in production to working in athletics in college for a little bit. All of those things currently still influence the way that I cook and the way that I think. My background in graphic design and like spatial awareness is what honestly gives me my ability to put food on a plate in a visually appealing way.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's one of those things that like, you kind of have to get over a hump of intimidation. The culinary world in particular can be, depending on the environment you work, it can be very competitive and seemingly kind of cutthroat. I've worked in both those environments and environments where I'm at now. I work at Dio Mio Pasta, where it's very collaborative and everyone around me is incredibly encouraging. And if I don't know something, I can just ask a question and there's not kind of that snooty attitude that follows it.
So what's your secret?
Yeah, right. After all that, my secret is when other things pique your interest, do not shy away from them because they can very well influence the art that you're working on and your main goal anyway. It's very important to draw inspiration from other sources. Otherwise, you just kind of end up like a run-of-the-mill factory-produced whatever, filmmaker, cook, lawyer, actor, accountant, I don't care. Going through just that traditional path that's been set before you by everyone else is just going to kind of lead you to like a blasé future, I really believe.
That's awesome. you mentioned a lot of the different things a lot of the different pathways that you kind of went through, starting from high school all the way back in high school through college, and then after college. You were the editor-in-chief at this school newspaper. Can you talk about how that influenced your filmmaking, your storytelling, and then this passion for baking?
Yeah, man, what a story. So journalism is something that's just like deeply important to me. I've worked in journalism since I was 17. Wrote for my high school paper. Working for CU Denver's college paper was my first job. I would say it was really like my first actual job that wasn't just like a reference through a friend. I moved to Denver. I didn't know anybody. Freshman at the university, I walked in with my little binder full of clips from high school and asked for a job. Wrote a couple articles and they hired me on full time. I would end up working there for 5 years. The last 2 years, I was the editor in chief. That particular job taught me the ability to, this is going to sound kind of strange, but not necessarily connect with people, but how to engage with people and like just kind of spark a dialogue with someone that I probably don't actually have anything in common with. And just how to kind of get the best information out of people. I think that's sometimes a thing we struggle with when, everyone has mentors in their field, and occasionally you get shoulder to shoulder with them and then you have no idea what to ask them. I think journalism kind of taught me how to always keep a level head in those situations, or any situations when I'm talking to someone, and get the best information out of them possible that I can. Also, just the general connections. The fact that I worked as a journalist 10 years ago now, those people that were writers and editors next to me are now professional writers and editors, and some of them are working on their own publications. Some of them work for the Denver Post and the Westward. Some of them do more niche things like work in music blogs. And it's just great to know those people in media, honestly. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of why. So my side baking project, Black and Delicate, I think that's part of what helped it get going, was the fact that I just know who's writing what people are reading in Denver. I know who the top editors are. I know who the top writers are. I know who the most interesting arts and entertainment writers are in the city, which is just great. I mean, I don't mean to have these personal relationships with them. I just know that as a writer, it's often very thankless, even though you might provide some really well-crafted and beautiful information, that it's not super hard to connect with these people. You just can kind of reach out to them and say, hey, I like your work. I love reading your byline. This is a project I'm working on. And most of them will get back to you. So that's kind of a through line skill that has helped me work on this baking and cooking profession. When it comes to the more technical side of cooking and baking, I think that working in journalism kind of just taught me to grind, truthfully.
Yeah.
I think that when you hear journalist, maybe the modern idea of that is someone who's just kind of behind a computer screen all day, and especially like in the midst of the pandemic and things. So I think kind of the archetype that people think of when they think of a journalist is you're either sitting down at a computer screen or you've got like a notepad in front of you and you're taking notes with your recorder in your hand and just kind of scrambling, and there's camera flashes going on and people are pointing mics out. But I think something different that a lot of really talented journalists do is they do their research and kind of find that I need to find the right word for this.
The ultimate truth?
Not necessarily the ultimate truth. I mean, that's the goal, is to like put the truth out there, right? But there's always kind of a core to the issue there. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it.
Because you have to dig deep, really deep. And then once you feel like you've dug deep enough, you have to dig even deeper. I mean, same with like, documentary filmmakers. There's a lot of parallels there.
I would call documentary filmmakers journalists 100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not easy. Some people are really passionate about something, but no one has ever asked them why they're passionate about it. And then when you ask them that, they're like, but you have to be there. You have to be present. You have to have that conversation with them. And I mean, as a journalist, there were some times where like the perfect source I needed could only talk to me at like midnight after I had a full day of class and things like that. And it's just like, you know what? You want your story to be right. You stay up and you talk to that person. You keep making the phone calls. You keep asking the tough questions. When we produced the paper, that was like a 24-hour cycle of, we'd often ship it off to the printer at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning for us to distribute it at 10 a.m. that same day. Again, another situation where I was working with people all from different backgrounds. I was a production major as the editor-in-chief, and most people that worked for me were in creative writing. A lot of them were grad students. I had to figure out how to lead this brigade of people as like a 22-year-old with really no other work experience outside of writing for this newspaper.
How did you just uphold this, if I can say, persona? You're diving into this role that you've been dabbling in since high school, but where did the confidence come from to step into this big role and to really lead the ship?
Trial and error. Trial and error is the thing that gave me the confidence to step up and say, hey, I want to lead this publication. So I should say, the first time I applied for the position, the first year I applied for it, I didn't get it.
Wow.
I was turned down.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, basically on account of me being younger and newer to the field and not having, and only having 1 year of editing experience. The previous year, I was working as the production editor, doing design and layout, but still doing lots of writing and photography and copy editing. And at that point, I felt ready to do the job of editor-in-chief. I applied for it. The board went with someone else, but I stayed on at the newspaper. I was in good standing. There was no reason for me to leave. If anything, walking into that interview gave me all the preparation I could have for the next year. Like, I knew who I was going to be talking to. I knew what questions they were going to ask me. I knew what the expectations of the job were. And I was lucky enough that the person who got the job, who would be my editor that year, had a lot of respect for me. So I really just got to be like one-on-one with her a lot of that time and prepare myself for the next, which would be 2 years of my career.
A slow and gradual progression. That's awesome. Okay, so that's your journalism parallel. Let's transition into your sort of more production, shooting, writing direction, where we were in college together and just meeting people that we thought that we would be a good pairing with. How did you start out? What was that initial spark that made you believe you want to be a storyteller?
So the first thing, the first production I was ever a part of, I was still in high school. My high school best friend, JD, he'd come across the Apple Insomnia Film Festival, 24-hour film race kind of thing. And we had to be, from ages 14 to like 17, all of us that did this project. And we made this silly little short. But it just kind of blew my mind. So I was a part of the quote unquote writing team for that, if you can call that, a bunch of teenagers that. And that came from working for the high school paper, where I would meet JD. He would invite me to this project. He's like, hey, you're a strong writer. Do you want to hop in on this? And I jumped at the opportunity. We made this funny little short. And something about that whole process made me think, like, because I knew I wanted to work in journalism, but I didn't want to go to just creative writing school. I didn't want to learn about poetry and writing beautiful prose and making 1,000 outlines and things like that. Like, I wanted to document. I either wanted to document or I wanted to write fantasy. Like, it was one or the other.
The opposite ends of the spectrum.
There was no in between. And I saw journalism as like, you know what, this might be a way that I can enter the workforce, with which ended up working out. And then the artful script writing was just so cool to me. And I like the way that scripts are set up and how it's structured to kind of give you those immediate visual cues, and how also, you know, two different people can read the same script and completely envision something different. And then trying to figure out how to pull all of that from everyone's brains and like put it onto the pixels. Like I was like, wow, this is amazing. How do I meet more people that have this idea? I'm graduating high school. I'm ready to go to college. I don't quite know what I want to do. And then I found CU Denver's theater and film program. And then, yeah, like showing up, man, I was so out of my element and intimidated. Like the skill that I had was writing, but I didn't have the script writing skill. I had the general, this is how you organize information. This is good information. This is fact checked information. That was my skill, which you don't need quite as much of that when you're script writing. Like truthfully, like getting the drafts out there, those researching skills I just mentioned are way more helpful in the pre-production conception phase. And then I found myself in the middle of it, and it was like sink or swim. Find the people who you think are great creators and learn from them. And that, I mean, I would say like that is like the rest is history. I would say you and I produced together consistently from about age 19 to like 26 or 27.
Oh shit. Has it been that long?
Yeah. Our first project, Stolen, we shot that when we were 19. I mean, it was probably the first like technical challenge I ever had. And I ended up being the gaffer for this project. Mm-hmm. And it honestly inspired me to want to work on lighting production for the rest of my time in film school.
I remember you were really passionate about it. You started geeking out on all the different angles and what the light does to a person's face, mm-hmm. and how to really distinguish between the different qualities of lights and the color of light and all the different things. And I would see you like fixating just like one little gel to make sure that there's no spill, nothing. I mean, yeah, it's a really beautiful art form of its own.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so that project we did was called Stolen. It was the first thing where I was like, man, I am around 3 other collaborators who are just trying to make this thing work, and we all want to make it beautiful, and we all are not afraid to put the time in. And that in and of itself kind of gives you confidence as an artist to say like, okay, maybe I'm not being so over the top, because I was, like you just mentioned, I was doing things like I would sit someone down on a stool, black out the room, and then just run a flashlight around their face to see how the shadows cast on their face from all 360 degrees of a light. Like there were times where I'm like, man, am I doing too much here? But truthfully, that's something that I still remember doing, and I can always mentally reference it to, okay, you know, if I want a scene to feel this way or a character to come across this way, I can do X, Y, and Z to make that happen.
So college is over, and you and I have become the best of friends, and we found a lot of different parallels in our lives and similarities in our pasts, and we connect on a really deep level, I think, as brothers.
Absolutely.
From another mother's. And then we get this wild, crazy, out of this world, stupid, perhaps irresponsible idea to move downtown while I didn't have a job. I mean, I didn't have a good enough paying job. I was working part-time. We were partying a lot, going out, mm-hmm. dancing, drinking. Doing the things that you do in your early 20s, right? After college. That was kind of a late starter. Anyway, this is probably too much information for you guys. But this is a little, like I said, it's a special edition episode.
It's more, more personal.
We move in together downtown, mm-hmm. living in an amazing apartment, having a great time. And then we get another brilliant idea. And what was that?
Man, we produced Decrees.
TheDecrees.com.
Yeah. So that is, The Decrees is a 10 episode web series. It's on YouTube, and there's a few what we like to call Decrees tidbits that are just kind of short 1-2 minute skits, specialty episodes, things like that. But truthfully, as George mentioned, we worked together all through college, but our relationship was very much more just a working relationship, a good one. And it wouldn't be until after college that we became very like friends on like a deep personal level. Mm-hmm. And in that time, I think both of us came out of our shells socially and started making things happen a little bit more for ourselves and meeting new people and bringing new people into our creative efforts that we wouldn't have met otherwise. I think those years in particular prior to Decrees were really critical for that. And I mean, truthfully, we'd spend time just like late night at bars, just kind of shooting the shit and talking about life and cross-referencing our past experiences. And one fateful night, we were sitting at the Hornet and on First and Broadway. I'm sure you all know and love it if you're in Denver. We were sitting at the Hornet one night, just drinking whiskey. And we're like, hey, what if we kind of essentially write a show about our friendship and what's gone down in the last couple of years? And it started out as like, okay, they'll just be like, a couple minute episodes tops, and we'll just see where we get with it. And then it quickly turned into, all right, we're going to have 10 solid episodes and it's going to be a series.
It ran away from us really fast. We got really excited.
It took off. Like we made a production brief and like a marketing strategy, a social media release. Every single person that worked on this project with us, like we're so lucky and so thankful, was frankly able to do it for free, just donating their time and their resources and their talent. And every single one of them is incredible. But in order to get them to do that, to have such talented people to work with, we had to sit down with them and show them how serious we were about it. Because as much as the show is a comedy and it's kind of based off of us being hooligans, like,
and we're starring
as
we're the lead characters.
That's another important part, is that we're actually acting in it. So we had to find a team that we could trust to do all of the tech stuff, which is usually our jam. And it was hard. It was very hard.
So what was the brilliant tool that I believe was your idea in order for when we are meeting these people that are going to potentially work on our set for free, because we weren't going to be able to afford day rates for people, not even, $100 a day. That would have been ridiculous with the amount of help that we got. What was the tool we used to really persuade them? You mentioned the production brief.
Yes.
I think that was a brilliant way to set that meeting off.
It is a very useful skill to figure out how to have people work for free for you. It's not something that I'm like, run around and just exploit people and have them work for free for you, but don't be afraid to ask. And the money and exposure are not the only two things that people can get from a production. That's something I want to say, and I'll get more into that in a second. But what we did was we made a pitch package. We did the branding for the show, The Decrees. We made a production brief that had real dates and timelines for what we were trying to do, locations that were scouted, contact information, all the equipment we were going to be using, things we needed to cast, like visual guidelines for the show.
And you designed it really well to just make it feel like this is a polished, like, even though we're not able to offer you a day rate, we want to let you know that we are really serious about it, number one, but we also really care about this project. And like, number three, it's going to get made either way. Like, it is happening. And it was kind of during that time when there was a lull with a lot of the people that were in our circle. Right. So we were like, hey, if you want to work on a really awesome set, like, we're going to make sure you're fed. We're going to make sure you have everything you need. Just, we need your help. And this is our heart. Like, we're laying it down on the table for you.
I think that's a really good point. Number three, you said there, of it's going to get made either way. I think that's kind of how you tap into people's, like, that sense of FOMO, like fear of missing out, of like, oh man,
yeah,
these guys are going for it. And like, you can totally believe in yourself enough to make other people believe in you. It's not easy, but it's 100% possible, because truthfully, we, on the production brief, this pitch package, this 4-page document that we were sending and presenting every single crew member with, under the budget budget area, I just had the like web loading error 404 icon because we did not have a budget, and I didn't want to lie to anybody. Like there was going to be some time in the future where like, oh yeah, we're going to pay you retroactively, or like, well, like, no, that is not why we're making this project. It's an idea. We want to do some fun technical stuff, and we would go to the specialists for those technical effects that we wanted. Billy Nicholson has been on this podcast. Great. He helped us a lot on Decrees. I absolutely loved filming with him. Mm-hmm. But like, I would say Billy has an incredible mind for shooting for editing transitions and just making it smooth. So you just hop from idea to idea to idea. And it's just like, man, I was just entertained for like the last 4 minutes, and I didn't question how we got from A to X like at all.
That's another great point, because obviously it's cliche to say that it was a learning experience, but for us, going from the perspective of writing the show, we kind of split it off and each wrote an episode. Mm-hmm. And then transitioning into, we got to learn the lines and like memorize all this stuff, because we don't want to be the ones holding people up on the film set that they're not getting paid for.
Exactly.
And we also want to keep the energy up high, and that shift in the perspective, and then just not being behind the camera anymore. We were in front of the camera, which was a different experience, I think, for both of us for after a little while, because we were both kind of focused on production and doing our own thing in that realm. But then watching all the different pieces of the film set working like a well-oiled machine. And we've worked with a lot of these people on numerous projects, right?
Absolutely.
But it was definitely very fun to see, kind of from the inside out instead of the outside in of how these people can really come together and work towards a common goal and create something really fun. And thedecrees.com.
It's out in the universe. And it's something that, I think we're both really proud of it. Again, as George said, we learned so much in that process. And ultimately did have a lot of fun, did bring a lot of our ideas that were just stuck in our head and got them out, like actually onto the screen, and did it in a professional manner. It was a great accomplishment.
It was awesome. And look, like we would have paid these people hundreds of dollars
100%
if we could, but we were tired of not doing anything but just talking about it. And I think we got to that point where we kind of just burned our ship and said, look, if there's no way back, if we want to do this, we can keep talking about it, then we just got to pull the plug and actually do it and complete it. And it's amazing, I think, how much we were able to pull off while, working part-time, doing other stuff, trying to earn a living to be able to pay for that freaking expensive apartment. But what was your, I'm curious to know, what was your sort of most intriguing part about working on a web series in terms of the whole process, like from conception to delivery as a mini YouTube series?
If I may, before we get into that question, I do want to double back really quickly, and because I said I would talk about it more. Like we've just been talking about, like, none of these people were paid. But what did we offer them, right? Because I don't want to have it be out there that we're just like, don't work for us for free. Because I honestly think that's the worst type of filmmaker, where your big thing is like, I just need people to work for free so I can put something on the screen and then try to ship it out there.
No, pay your people, your crew.
Absolutely pay your people. Please. And if you can't be super upfront about that and let them know, like give them something to be excited about. For us, we happen to know a lot of people that are really into cool camera movements and in-camera effects and kind of creating that movie magic transition. People that love all types of lighting and to get really dramatic with lighting. And you essentially have to hand these artists the brush and say, hey, you know what? I can't give you money, but what I can give you is creative freedom up here. This is my idea on paper just to kind of get it going, but I want your idea. I want your magic in my project. And when you say that to someone, they're not thinking about money anymore. They're thinking about how if this might be one of 10 times in their life that they actually do get to do exactly what they want. And that's invaluable, especially to an artist. Like, there are lots of name actors that do these like indie films where they're not making that like $1 million check, but because they absolutely love the script and saw the passion and are just like, yeah, let's do this. Like, let's make some art that's fun.
Let's make some art that's fun, filmmakers. I noted the time here on the recording because I think that's going to be my little teaser at the beginning of this episode. That was absolutely brilliant. Value being dropped by Bryan Smith over here. I'd love to transition a little bit because we have little time left, but I wish I could talk to you for hours, and I wish my filmmakers could listen to you for hours. What inspired you to start baking bread? And you mentioned something at the very beginning of the interview where you said making food for people. Like, that's something that's really fulfilling about that. And I hope you can really expand upon that and let me see inside of your brain what makes you tick as a baker, as a cook, as a chef.
So the C word, the chef word. I always describe myself as a professional cook. I try not to use chef because for me, chef has a certain meaning of like someone who has actively led a brigade of cooks and is also doing the costing and the menu development. And that's just not where I'm at in my career yet. I'm working toward it. Not there yet, but I'm confident I will get there. But why I started cooking in the first place, truthfully, is I was broke. I needed a job that I could get that was just, frankly, physical labor to keep my lights on. And I started washing dishes in a salad bar. I would end up working there for a couple of years and would eventually be the general manager there. When I left that business, I got my first job as a line cook. And I would say that's when I really started cooking. Before, I was just kind of serving things that were prepared off of a cold bar. When I got my first line cook job, that's when I was making hot food to order. And it's like, it's got to be right. And this sauce has got to taste right. And your seasoning to order and things like that. And making that particular transition from kind of a pretty easy day job, slinging salad until 3 p.m. any given day, to moving toward now I'm a dinner cook where I show up for work at noon and often get out at midnight. That was a hard transition for a lot of reasons. There was a lot of like mental health things to get over with it, exhaustion, and just like now that I'm not working that 9 to 5, I don't see my friends who generally are working those kind of jobs. But there was something about the kitchen that just kept calling me back. And the crystallizing moment I'll always remember is I was working at Bacon Social House in the Highlands in 2017. And it's still on the menu. It's like a classic. It's the shrimp and grits on the menu. It is like a star-studded standout menu item, I think. And I've made it so many times, but this particular one, I was like, it's the only thing I'm cooking right now. I'm going to spend the next 8 minutes of my life just like I'm going to place every grain of salt to the grain, And so I work on it. I played it beautifully. I put it up in the window. And in this particular kitchen, there were swinging doors between the kitchen and the dining area. And I just watched the server kind of drop the plate in front of this guest. And I was really proud of the plate. Sets it down in front of this girl. And the first thing she does is her eyes get really big and she sits up in her seat and she claps her hands like this because she's so excited just based on the way that it looked. And she takes a bite of it and like, not to be dramatic, but like her eyes roll the back of her head and she's immediately like making everyone else at the table take a bite of it because of how much she's enjoying it.
No, please, brother, be dramatic. And I think this is an amazing moment. I'm pulled into your story. Are you guys noticing, my filmmakers? I hope you're paying attention because Bryan is describing details and the way that he was feeling and kind of like the surroundings. And the detail is what makes the story. And I think you're doing it beautifully. So please keep going.
Oh, thank you. She immediately takes a bite, just I can tell she's enjoying it. She makes the other 4 people she's eating with, everyone has to take a bite of this dish. And I remember turning around and pulling back up to my station and having a very real moment of like, this could be what I actually do for a living. At the time when I first started cooking, I was still like, this is a side hustle until I get that graphic design job at a creative agency. But really that, like, something that I took from raw ingredients and made with my bare hands and put in front of someone, when you do it well, you really can't beat that satisfaction. And then you jump into like, okay, how do I do this better? Which is essentially a question in terms of cooking of like, how do I learn my food science better? And getting repetitions on simple things like make 1,000 omelets and you'll be able to make a perfect omelet. But like, you have to be in that environment. No one's going to sit at home and make 1,000 omelets. Like, I've made thousands of omelets because I've worked in a brunch restaurant for years. And there's something very raw and humbling about food where like the food does not care about my background. I mentioned eggs a second ago. In my line of work, I have worked with people from all different backgrounds. I have worked with people who have face tattoos, and working in the back of a kitchen is the only job that they can get. And I've also worked with people who have full-fledged microbiology and food science degrees from Ivy League universities, but we've all worked in the same kitchen. I've worked with everyone in between that spectrum. And at the end of the day, when I need to cook a sunny side egg, that egg doesn't give a shit about my background, doesn't care about my education. It cares like what heat control I'm using and like the quality of my ingredients and like the finesse and things like that. I mean, I've met people that I never probably would have even had a conversation with and have made good friends in that way and learned from people constantly along the way. I would say 85% of what I've learned, like in the kitchen, I've not learned those things from the person who's appointed the exec chef or the sous chef. I've learned those things from the line cooks that work next to me, and we grind it out every single night. And, and just kind of going forward with that, like learning to become a baker came from me working as a cook for a couple of years and seeing that is a huge gap in knowledge. Everyone wants to hop on the saute range and flip pans and flambe things or get on the grill. And, that's exciting. Those are action stations. And baking and pastry work is kind of looked at as like, oh, you do that behind the scenes in the basement. There's no like glory in that. But when you meet people who are masters of baking, like you find out that they're like master scientists. And it's really, I think it's really, really beautiful. I think it's so practical, and really bakers are only working with like 6 or 7 different ingredients, period. Like you're working with like butter, sugar, flour, eggs, salt, and then like, cinnamon and brown sugar, things like that when you're getting into flavorings. But really those like base 5-6 ingredients you're just like bending them in different directions and figuring out how to get that really nice product.
Like Doctor Strange.
Exactly like Doctor Strange.
That makes sense.
That's what I pictured.
I was just picturing that movie where he does all the different gestures and he's bending time and space. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing.
I mean, I like to think of it that way.
Why Black and Delicate?
Why the name Black and Delicate? There's not a huge like waxing philosophical reason for that, truthfully. I am a black man.
What?
Gad. Yeah.
I had no idea.
So yeah, frankly, as a black man, something I've run into in this industry is that everyone kind of has a specialty in the kitchen. You find things you gravitate toward and you just like work on them. And most people assume my specialty is that I like really work with a lot of proteins. Like I'm more into butchering and smoking things and barbecuing and like breaking down different animals, which is great. I absolutely love those types of foods. I have that skill set, But the thing I'm really passionate about is splashing around in a 50-pound bag of flour. And
I love that vision.
it's true though. Like when I have like a good ball of dough in my hands, it's just like, oh, all right, things are like right with the world. And I have this little glob of life in my hand, and I'm going to shape it and I'm going to throw it in the oven and it's going to come out and it's going to caramelize and be golden brown, yada, yada, yada.
So that's where the delicate part comes in.
That is really where the delicate part is. That the assumption with me is that I can't do that kind of delicate work that requires some finesse and some timing and some science. And I mean that assumption 100%, like I'm 100% confident to say it. That assumption comes from my race, because if you put me next to a white girl in her 20s who just graduated pastry school, mm-hmm. and you sit us next to each other, you don't give anyone any information and say one of these people is a pastry chef, you're absolutely going to assume it's the 20s white girl.
Right.
And I am guilty of that as well. It's still something I'm adjusting to, like, as I have put myself out on the internet as a baker of color, I've been coming into contact with more bakers of color. And it's crazy that we all have the same experience of, I think, baked goods that are put on a platform are things like baguettes and croissants and all this very French stuff. But I hate to say it, the French didn't invent food. Mm-hmm. Something that's happened.
Oh no!
Yeah. No offense, but
I love French.
Yeah,
I love the French as well. Please don't get offended.
Absolutely love the French, and I love French food. But in the culinary community, the French just have this dominance over everything, in a way that people don't even open their mind to the fact that there are other styles of breads that are being still naturally leavened and made with similar base techniques that the French have frankly published, but they've been doing these things for centuries, and they have their own cultural breads and baked goods. And I think that's something that gets glossed over. When I started baking, my number one goal, I remember saying this to people, was like, I'm going to spend a year and I'm going to figure out how to make the perfect baguette. That was more than 2 years ago, and I still cannot make the perfect baguette. I've since invested my time in really learning the food science, and then finding more products that are just not always on the shelves. You can walk into King Soopers and get something that they call a croissant. Mm-hmm. You can go into Whole Foods and get a shitty dried baguette. So that's something that's really important to me in that field, is just like keeping my perspective open in all regards. Because right now there's someone in the village in a remote area that doesn't have a TV show, doesn't have internet. No one's putting their story out there, but they're making the best flatbread that anyone will ever taste in their entire life, because it has some kind of connection to like the region and the land, and you're not going to get it anywhere else unless you actually go there. So I think it's I think that's a critically important part of baking to me.
Yeah, I don't know if this question is even appropriate, but do you feel like the underdog?
So in Denver, I don't feel like the baking scene is so competitive that it's like me or you. I can honestly say, and I'm going to throw out a couple of names for local bakeries of people that I really love and support. Goody Get Right. Matt Doolin and his wife Lindsay are doing some really amazing things with their bakery. They also run a plant nursery. These are two people that I met a year and a half ago at a farmer's market. I guess just last summer. Sorry. Last summer I met at a farmer's market and just kind of picked his brain about his baking operation. He gave me no holds barred. Like he'd let me know how much his loaves weigh before they get proved and baked. Like we had an excellent conversation, and he ultimately just told me, he's like, yeah, if you have any questions about the process, like just let me know. And I remember when I launched Black and Delicate and the Westward article came out, he was one of the first people to comment, and he said congratulations and said, thank you so much. You really inspired me to do this. And even then he's like, yeah, now you have your own thing and like forge your own path. Like it'll be exciting to see. And I mean, like Matt is an incredible baker. Like I wish I could make the kind of laminated dough that he does. I'm always super excited to get his chocolate croissants, and my girlfriend has actually bought some plants from their plant nursery. Another one I want to plug is Good Bread Denver. Gabby and Oliver and that team that works with them, they're so fantastic. I've been able to watch that business grow. I remember I used to, like, when they would bake on weekends, I could walk in there at like 9 a.m., like no line, just come through, pay up some pastries, shoot the shit a little bit and be on my way. And now, I mean, their line goes like halfway around the block. And it's such good quality. I absolutely love it. Buttermoon Baking Company is another one. All of these businesses that I'm talking about started out as cottage bakeries, like I'm trying to do right now. And so, I mean, for those reasons, like I have messaged so many of these bakers on Instagram, and we've had back and forth, and we've given each other advice on certain things or different products. Like we are all kind of baking different things. So like, I feel like I can just always indulge. Like I can always bake my own stuff, but I can also always go to a bakery that does something new that I don't do. And I love it. And I like truly enjoy it and want to support them, and they want to support me. So I don't feel like the underdog in that. I mean, I don't really feel like an underdog. The wave of support I've seen so far has really just been like, whoa, I didn't know there was this big of a need for this thing I'm excited about doing. I haven't been to culinary school, and I don't have that true professional, like in a bakery baking experience. I've taught myself at home. There was a little bit of intimidation getting over that hump before I was going to say, hey, I'm putting a dollar amount on this cinnamon roll. But really, I got over that hump by having so many people try my stuff and having enough of them tell me I would buy this. I would pay $5 for this. Can I pay $5 for this? Like that kind of thing.
When you really build up that momentum, I think it was really awesome to see the reaction that you received from really everybody. And there's a question that I had in my mind. It was related to something you said that was forge your own path. And I think that really relates to the filmmakers out there that are listening. This is something that you had a spark of an idea, and you knew you wanted to do something in that realm that was more than just baking for yourself or baking for, a limited amount of people. You had this this kind of moment, this epiphany, and you decided to build up this platform, build up this business, and you're on that journey right now of the upwards path, going towards something. What is that you're going towards? What's the future of Black and Delicate?
The ultimate future I'd really truly like for Black and Delicate is I'd like to be inside of a brick and mortar. I'd like to have my own bakery where I work with a small team, and we make products that we are super proud of and are creative, and make things that are unique. I want to create a space where there is a platform and a seat at the table for bakers and any kind of culinarian really of color. In my experience, I've been cooking for a little over 4 years now. I've worked for, like, every single chef I've worked for has been white and a male, except for one. I've worked for one white female chef, and then the other 7 or 8 have all been white men. And, I have learned a lot of things from them. And of course, I don't mean like any offense in that regard, but like white men didn't invent cooking. Like there are so many other perspectives out there that are just not, those voices don't need to be put on a pedestal. We just need a seat at the table. And I'm stealing that line from another baker of color. His name is also Bryan. His name is Bryan Ford. He has a book called New World Sourdough. That book was integral to me launching my business. He's an Afro-Honduran baker and just very inspiring guy all around. But yeah, that's something he said very recently is that, like, you know, we just need a seat at the table. We know what we want to say. We have our own traditions. We are ready to share, but we kind of need to break through, frankly, some social barriers in order to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Talk more about that.
Like in particular, what Bryan Ford is doing, or like the kind of seat at the table.
The seat at the table concept. I think there's a lot of perspectives lost. Like, right, if you don't travel anywhere outside of the small little town that you have lived in for a long time, mm-hmm. you don't get the privilege of having this varying perspective. Like, people are different. 3 feet away from you, people are going to be totally different. Go out of state, go out of the country, and you're going to get completely flabbergasted about the different perspectives that you can gain from other people and just other religions and other nationalities, races, genders, all the different, you know, melting pots of people that you don't get if you just stay in your comfort zone. You have to break out of that. So, like, what does that really mean, getting a seat at the table?
Having a seat at the table is like, when I say baguette, when I say croissant, you can picture those things immediately. But if I say pan de coco, there are not a lot of people that can picture what that actually looks like. If I say birotes, which are they're a sandwich bread, but it has a little bit of beer in the dough. They're called birotes. They're usually meant for like very juicy soaked sandwiches because they have a nice hard crust. And when you add a really saucy protein and other things to it, they're beautiful
as you speak.
What else? So those two are both examples that I'm pulling from Bryan Ford's book, New World Sourdough. Like even like unfortunately for a lot of people in the States, like even something as simple as like a tortilla is a hard shell thing that comes in a box that says El Paso. And it's a bummer, you know? But it's like, man, so many generations of people have put in the hard work, and now just the information is available online. If you want to make homemade tortillas out of masa or like flour, you can find that information online, no problem. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I think that seat at the table is more like the mold just needs to be broken in a lot of ways. I think with food in particular, we've just been doing more in the States. We've just been doing more of the same for so long that I think it's just kind of like, as a baker, kind of the power of flour in your hands, to limit it to the two things of like a baguette and a croissant make you the ultimate baker. It's just a slap in the face to other people that have spent the same amount of years as, you know, the best croissant maker and the best baguette maker. There are people who have spent that same amount of time making tortillas, but they were probably doing it for survival, not to be on an Instagram post, you know? And that's something I try to tell people about the baked goods I make is like, I want my baked goods to look beautiful. Of course, you eat with your eyes, but I want my baked goods to be like sustaining when you eat them. My bread, I don't think, is like the classic open crumb Instagrammy loaf where it's just like so wispy. Because if you put peanut butter on that, it's going to fall through the bread.
It's impractical. There's no function,
exactly,
no benefits to that bread.
Yeah, what George just said is like, yeah, it's impractical. And it's like, for me, if I'm going to put in this work and like sweat over this stuff, like it needs to be practical. People need to feel fulfilled when they have something that comes from me. I don't want them to cut open their loaf of bread and think, oh, this looks beautiful for Instagram, and then they throw away half of it. That's like, get out of here, you know?
Eat it.
Yeah, like eat it, like taste it. Like that's the whole deal here. That's why I spend 18 hours plus on a loaf of bread, so that when someone eats it, they're sustained and they feel good. And I think that is something that is core to a lot of the work that bakers of color are doing, is that like our baking comes from sustenance and not so that we can stand on a stage and say, I'm the best pastry chef that's out there.
There's a humility to that craft.
Well, 100%. And it should be like, that's where it came from. Thousands of years ago, someone accidentally made bread. They probably milled some flour and it got wet and sat in like a dingy, moist corner of the barn. And then it started capturing the natural yeast in the air. And then someone was like, oh shit, this is bubbly. What happens if I mix it with my dry flour and some water? And I bet the first loaf of bread ever made was like a dense brick, but they could eat it and they could put salt on it and their fish or whatever cured thing they were keeping with them. And now, years and years down the line, now it's a mastered craft. Even some things about baking, people are really into the scoring of a loaf, like cutting cool patterns on top of your bread. The original reason that bakers were doing that was because you lived in a village. There was a food guild that had all of the food and all the ingredients, like a giant pantry. There would be one oven, and you've got to stoke the fire for that oven. That's someone's job. They're only going to do it a certain amount of certain hours in a day. So you have to make sure your bread is ready to bake for those hours, and you can only go at a certain time. But guess what? Everyone else in the village is also baking their bread. So you would score your bread so you knew it was your own. You can make it your initials or whatever, but that's the original thing. It wasn't so that I have this amazing oven spring and
it was the signature of the baker. That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful sentiment. I love that.
Yeah. And it's like, again, that was a survival thing. Someone was like, holy crap, I can take this bag of milled wheat that doesn't taste like anything and I can feed my family tonight. And someone saw that and did it. Other people kept replicating it. People travel. Those techniques get shared. And I mean, a lot of it has been lost. Like another thing I love about cooking in general is like I could live 8 lifetimes and not learn it all. There's always going to be someone who's better than me at something who I can learn something from, an ingredient that I've never touched, an ingredient I've never seen or smelled or cooked with. Like the fact that I could do that for my entire life and never get bored is amazing.
You can always learn new things, never stop learning, filmmakers. So, Bryan, I said that wewe're winding down.
How much
30 minutes
How much time are we over?
But then we started talking about food, and I started salivating. And I've enjoyed listening to you talk about your passion. You're clearly super amped about everything that's happening in your life, in your professional career. And I wish you the best of luck with Black and Delicate. I have one last question for you, and that is, what is your desert island dessert or baked good?
My
How about
desert
that one?
island dessert
You like that?
or baked good. That's real good. Ooh, what does it for you?
If you could only eat one dessert / baked good for the rest of your life, what would it be? Just so you guys know, I cut out all this silence.
I was just thinking that, like, you have to cut out a lot of dead
because
space.
this really tripped Bryan up. He has absolutely no clue which dessert to pick that he's going to be
You really
limited
got
to
me with that
for
one.
the rest of his life. So really think about it. Like,
Yeah.
If it was a movie, for me, it's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I could actually no. I
Fifth Element. You
It's
liar.
the Fifth Element. I've just been thinking about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless
Looking
Mind.
at the poster right now.
Yeah, I have a beautiful poster up there. No, if the food, the dessert that you could always come to every day and know that it's not going to disappoint you.
You know what? The thing I can think of, and this is not truly something I make that often because I'm still working on my own laminated dough practices. I am a really big fan of, look, what you would commonplace call a turnover. Essentially like puff pastry with some kind of jam or fruity filling inside, folded over and baked. It's sweet, it's buttery, It's got nice layers and it's crispy. The texture is great. You can make them savory. Like you could essentially make like a pizza hot pocket with the same kind of dough.
Catch a hog.
Yeah.
Some bacon.
Seriously. You can throw anything.
I don't know. Do hogs hang out on islands?
I mean, it's probably boars, but you might die trying to make some bacon out of that guy.
So a turnover. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a really simple thing. I think it's highly customizable, and it can hit all the flavor notes. But I think the biggest thing is that it hits a texture note that I really like. I love a nice, crispy, flaky dessert that when you bite into it, just the layers just
delicious
explode everywhere, and it's buttery and all kinds of happy. Yeah.
There you have it, filmmakers. Bryan Smith, go check out all the links in the show notes. Black and Delicate, follow him on Instagram. He's going to have some amazing shit coming down the pipeline. And by that, I mean delicious dessert pictures that you need to follow in order to receive. So thank you so much for listening, Bryan. I want to thank you an absorbent amount for coming on Filmmaker Secrets podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, brother. This has been absolutely incredible and fun, and honestly a nice outlet, because as a cook, sometimes your job is just kind of thankless, and you run in and grind, and you slice and dice, and you heat it up and serve it and throw it in a bowl. And there's not always that time to have like the artful culinary discussion. And I think that is something that could help a lot of people keep cooking. I've certainly hit the block in my 4 and change years of cooking a few times where I'm like, man, is this really the thing to do? But it's really nice to have an artistic conversation about food, where I'm not standing in a 100-degree kitchen sweating and trying to get ready for service. So thanks a lot.
I got you, brother.
Yeah.
All right, filmmakers, thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you on the next one. If you like that, then you are going to love my Cine Racing Challenge. This is a 7-day filmmaking competition where your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to write, shoot, and edit a short 60-second film in just 7 days for your one chance to win with over $10,000 in prizes. So head over to cineracing.com. That's cineracing.com to get registered. Spots are filling up fast, and the timer is ticking before the next Cine Racing Challenge launches. So be sure to head over to cineracing.com right now to get registered. I'll see you over there.